Hello everyone, good morning, namaste, and Jai Bhim. I'm Amar Bikhe and I'm speaking from Pittsburgh, USA. I'm doing my PhD in anthropology at the University of Pittsburgh, USA, as Madan Pariyar just introduced me. You are welcome to tonight's panel conversation on rethinking caste globally. The organizer has given me the task of moderating this conversation. I feel deeply honored to have this task, and I want to thank the Darnal Award and Samatha Foundation for it. Tonight, we are here to have a conversation on a really important topic. This topic is important not only because caste has become a global problem now, but because we have to find new languages, vision, and strategies to fight against this problem. Caste does not restrict to South Asia. It has traveled to other countries across the world, along with South Asian migrants. Consequently, caste has become a subject which even countries like the US and the UK have to deal with. Diasporic Dalits are pressing these countries for recognizing caste discrimination as a form of racism. On the other hand, scholars have compared and contrasted caste with other forms of oppression around the world, particularly with race. Dalit scholars and activists have been equating caste to race and casteism to racism. We have been urging the United Nations for decades to recognize caste as a form of racism. In a sense, we are claiming that caste is equivalent to race, or that casteism is be recognized as a form of racism. In contrast, a powerful book has recently been published by a Pulitzer Prize winner, African American writer Isabel Wilkerson. The book is Caste: Origin of Our Discontents. In the book, she argues that racial order in America is a caste system. She says, quote, caste and race are neither synonymous nor mutually exclusive. They can and do coexist in the same culture and serve to reinforce each other. Race in United States is the visible agent of the unseen force of the caste. Caste is the bones, race the skin, unquote. She asserts that race and racism are insufficient terms. So when we were saying that caste be recognized as a form of race, she is suggesting that race and racism should be understood as a form of caste. Thus, her work has opened up new possibilities for new thinking on caste and race. The book seems to have enormous potential to generate public discourse on caste in the US. It is because, one, the book is written by a prestigious award winner. And second, the book has come out in such a moment in the US when conversation on caste is at the peak. Caste was an unknown word or concept in the American mainstream. I assume this book has potential to educate American mainstream on caste system and to familiarize the plights of Dalits of South Asia. The book might also open new possibilities for greater collaboration between Dalits and African Americans. So part of the tonight's conversation is inspired by this book. I'm not going to provide a review of the book here. Fortunately, I have here my great friends to talk on the topic. We will hear from them what they think of Wilkerson's work and how we can rethink the question of caste globally. Additionally, we will also hear from them how they are viewing the problem of caste, how they are working to address it, and what kind of future engagement they are looking forward to. Our panelists are young scholars, activists, who have done remarkable work in their respective fields. Late Suvash Darnal believed in younger generation. Therefore, he endeavored producing and grooming young scholars. So this panel conversation is also a way to pursue Darnal's dream. I want to talk a little bit about today's format of today's conversation. We will hear first from our panelists for about 60 minutes. I will ask 3 rounds of questions to each panelist, and each will have 5 minutes to respond to. The organizer has requested each panelist to read Wilkerson's article in the New York Times entitled America's Enduring Caste System, in which she summarizes key arguments of her book. So our panelist responses will be based on this article. After the conversation, I will invite 3 highly respected thinkers to make their brief comments. They are Professor Shailaja Paik, Nepal's ambassador to Bahrain, Padam Sundas, and Professor Kansa Ilaya Sefer. We know they have enormous knowledge on the subject, and we need to hear so much from them, but due to time constraint, each will have just 2 minutes. Then we will have the question and answer session for 20 minutes. If you have any questions or comments to the panelists, please type them in the Zoom question and answer box. Sunaina Arya, a PhD candidate at Jawaharlal Nehru University and also a global change maker, will read the questions from the Q&A box and direct them to our panelists. Towards the end, Sarita Pariyar will provide her remark as a founding convener of Darnal Award. And finally, the event will end with a closing remark by Pradeep Pariyar, Executive Chairperson of Samatha Foundation. So we started the program some 15 to 20 minutes later. So because of technical glitches, I assume the audience will not mind staying some 15 or 20 minutes later than the scheduled time. Now I want to introduce our panelists. We have Sarita Pariyar, who is a writer, social justice activist, and founding convener of Darnal Award for Social Justice. We have Anurag Bhaskar. Anurag is a lecturer at Jindal Global Law School in Sonipat, India. We have Kalyani K, who is a doctoral student in sociology at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Lastly, we have Mari Joik Matre. Mari is a Dalit diasporic activist, scientist, and community organizer. So welcome you all the panelists. So, dear panelists, I will ask the same question to each of you. You will have 5 minutes to respond. I request you to answer the questions in an order. First Sarita, then Anurag, then Kalyani, and finally Mari. So are you all ready? I hope so. Okay, so the first round of questions. Please tell us what drives your passion or engagement with caste questions. If possible, briefly tell us one example or an incident or an idea or thought about your own work that you find is important for helping us better understand dangerous powers of caste-based unequal society that we wish to annihilate. Sarita ji.
I really want to say thank you, and I'm really honored to share platform with you and my Dalit Global Change Maker friends. So I really want to say thank you. So to start my answer, I would like to quote James Baldwin, who says, "The great force of history comes from the fact that we carry it within us, are unconsciously controlled by it in many ways, and history is literally present in all that we do." The history of my family, my society, and my nation, I always carry it with me. One day, nearly 20 years ago, when I was 12, I went to the village shop to buy bread. When I got home, Bua, my father, saw the bread was stale. Return the bread, he told me. The high caste shopkeeper refused to take the bread back because I had touched the package. When I told my father, he became angry. Go return it. He ordered, if you want, take it, throw it in his face. I'll take care of whatever comes after that. I was frightened. I didn't have the courage to throw the bread at the shopkeeper, but neither could I defy my father. I sat by the road for a long time, scared. I wondered why I hadn't been given the right goods, even though I had paid for them. The bread hadn't turned stale from my touch, and I had paid the full price for a fresh loaf. I gathered all my courage and confronted the shopkeeper. Please return my money, and please take your bread back. What a stubborn girl, he muttered as he returned the money. I clutched the paper bills in my sweaty hands and rushed home. I began to ask myself, why had the shopkeeper refused to take the bread back? If the bread had become impure because of me, did it mean that my body was dirty or impure? When I was about 8 years old, I realized that people came into two groups, touchable or pure, and untouchable or impure. Even as a child, whenever I was told that I shouldn't touch someone or something because I would pollute them, it made me ask, what am I? The rules seemed so arbitrary. Who and what could I not touch, where and when? Who could be touched and who not? I wanted to be a touchable person just like everybody else, but there is no freedom to transform into a touchable person if you are born an untouchable. Later, another curiosity arose. What is caste? Why is one group ranked above another from birth? I never stopped thinking about my originally touchable mother who gave birth to untouchable children and the history tied to it. It is just not my experience, but more than 250 million people worldwide continue to face caste indignities. The more I started learning about caste question, I became determined on understanding caste. I believe the purpose of my life is to learn and collaborate to annihilate the caste system. So let me stop here, and I'm really excited to listen to all of my friends. So thank you, Amarji.
Thank you, Saritaji. Anurag,
Yeah,
I invite you to
yeah. Hello,
respond.
everyone. Thank you, Amarji, for inviting me, and thank you to the organizers. 15th August has personally been a memorable day for me as well. Like it was just 2 years ago when I took the flight from Lucknow to Boston in US for I was going to Harvard Law School where I'd got admission just 2 years ago. So I'd got, I think someone said that I can't hear very much, so I will try to be a bit louder. So like it was 2 years ago when I was leaving for Boston just on the eve of on 15th August. And on the flight to Boston, I was thinking about my journey, my family's journey, and like what had made that possible for me to go to US to study at a prestigious university. So I thought that like after a lot of time, I thought that my journey, my family's journey has been a result of the struggles and sacrifices made by the people in the past who have struggled for an equal India, for an equal society. And I thought that I was beneficiary of the policies that were made out of that struggle. For instance, the policy of affirmative action provided by the Indian Constitution helped my father to get a government job in his struggling years, and that helped him to like give me get like a good education, and because of that I could like study and could dream of studying in a prestigious university like Harvard. The second impact I thought was the political movement which was going on in India in the 1990s. Like I was born in the 1990s, and in my state, a political party representing Dalit rights was on the rise. So I feel that that helped my family to embrace their identity because it was coming out as a symbol of assertion in the 1990s. The movement led by Kanshiram and Mayawati in UP. So that helped my family to talk about these issues in with us. And we started celebrating Dr. Ambedkar's life. And that was the time when I read about him. Every 14th April, that his birthday, we would celebrate as a festival. So these all things which happened, whether social progress or political movement, I think it has helped me personally to understand, to like influence me as a child, and then has impacted my thinking. So like these are the things which I think shape my thought process directly and indirectly. And I studied law in the hope that I could contribute, as Dr. Ambedkar also studied law. I wanted to study in a US university, in a global university, because Dr. Ambedkar was also there. So this has been the background behind whatever work I've been doing. So I'll try to use my whatever knowledge I've acquired till now to deal with like the caste question on like through a legal perspective, to understand the interface between law and society. And I've been writing on these issues through like in legal scholarship, because we see that caste has been covered by scholars in political science or sociology or anthropology, but there's a lack of scholarship when it comes to law, like how like the interface. So I've been trying to do that through my own writings, and like that's the base, like all about me. So I'll now stop and let's go to the other person. Thank you, Amar.
Thank you, Anurag. Kalyani?
Thank you, Amar, for inviting me. Thank you, Darnal Award for Social Justice and Samta Foundation. Since you've talked about discussing caste experience, my caste experience has not been much different from what every Dalit Bahujan face across India. While I too have lived with the similar caste realities, it was only during my PhD that I have thought of engaging seriously with the problem of caste and doing a systematic study of the problem of caste. Now, the exact moment that pushed me to rethink caste was when I came across unending violence that Dalit Bahujans have been facing, particularly in the regions of North Indian belt. The violence on Dalit Bahujan range from discriminating them in institutional spaces, killing them when they ride horses, shaving off their mustaches, their head, chopping off their private parts, or even rape, etc., to just name few. What disturbed me even further was the fact that the question of justice to the problem of caste has been largely absent. This is because either there is a systematic erasure of reporting such violence, or there has been a lack of collective will to engage with the caste question. I think being a Dalit Bahujan woman myself, caste has been a very different experience to me. Escaping caste realities is never easy for a Dalit Bahujan woman, who are doubly marginalized both due to their caste as well as due to their gender. Being a Dalit Bahujan woman, there is a constant fear to contain one's sexual dignity, which is rendered more vulnerable when compared to an upper caste woman, for instance. However, I strongly feel that Dalit Bahujan women have been very strong. They have a very strong grit and determination to escape caste and caste realities which are thrown open to them. In my research, for instance, I have in fact explored many such cultural spaces where Dalit women have been very assertive and they have resisted caste through their music, through their popular writing, etc. So these cultural spaces have in fact emancipated Dalit women, and it has allowed them to rethink caste. So this is a very encouraging thing for me, and I think my caste experience primarily comes from my own location and also from my field experience of experiencing caste and knowing caste and also engaging with the caste question. So that's a brief thing I want to talk about. Thank you.
Thanks, Kalyani. So yeah, let me go to the second round of question to the panelists. So according to our plan for this conversation, we requested you to read the article America's Enduring Caste System by Isabel Wilkerson of the New York Times. Please tell us about its significance in thinking about caste globally. Sarita ji.
Yeah, thank you, Amarji. As you also mentioned in your brief remarks, as Isabel says, her recent book on caste is an invitation to look for new language for understanding the long history of race in America. She explains how caste is bones and race is the skin. Looking at the caste is like holding the country's X-ray up to the light. The superstructure of America is caste. So I just want to read what she has written in the piece, and it really touched my heart. If we have been trained to see humans in the language of race, then caste is the underlying grammar that we encode as children as when learning our mother tongue. Caste, like grammar, becomes an invisible guide not only of how we speak, but also of how we process information, the automatic calculation that figure into a sentence without our having to think. So this would be my first point. And the second point, that I'm very inspired by Isabel's powerful writing style, which connects her personal experience of telling a story from the perspective of a Black woman. I just want to pick one of her stories from her long article published in the New York Times. It's like when she was a national correspondent of New York Times based in Chicago, she wanted to do a story about Magnificent Mile. She had an appointment with the manager of a boutique business. And when Isabel met with the manager, she introduced herself, but the manager didn't believe what she was person with New York Times. He asked for her business card, which she didn't have at that time. He asked for other identification proof, and she gave her license. He kept saying that he is busy and had another appointment at that time. She left the boutique, and in reflecting on her incident, Isabel writes, here I quote her, his caste notions of who should be doing what in society had so blinded him that he dismissed the idea that a Black woman could also be the writer in the New York Times. So the third point, I would say, like one of the main arguments of Isabel's work is that until we recognize the problem of long racial and caste history of America, which she says is based on human hierarchy, we will not allow everyone to breathe the fresh air, because the old house is rotten and it stinks. So ignorance is not the solution, which is why it is time that everyone should make effort to annihilate the caste globally. And then the fourth significance that I found in her piece is her articulation is distinct and new on the long history of racial discrimination in America. At the same time, it made me to think, how can I better observe and articulate injustices experienced by Dalit women to larger conceptual and structural issues in Nepal? For me, I found her long, careful research, synthesis, and writing very inspiring. It made me better appreciate the power of rethinking our own stories, as she did on race in America, and then tell her new insights in a more powerful and persuasive ways. Isabel does a brilliant job of helping us rethink the deeper dynamics of what, why, and how racial discrimination persists in America, and how the idea and the deeper meaning of caste is very important for understanding unequal life for Black people in and beyond America. Inspired by her work, I'm wondering if we too can find new ways of looking at caste within Nepal, within India, and globally for helping us, the people, both Dalits and non-Dalits, to rethink and engage with annihilating caste-based unequal society forever. So let me stop here to better use our time. So let's hear from other friends. Thank you, Amarji.
Thank you, Saritaji. Anurag.
Thanks, Amar, again. For me, the most important part of the recent work by Isabel Wilkerson is the clear understanding that she has given to the relation between caste and race in a global context. And I feel that this can play an important role, like in changing the narration in the international rights-based framework, like in the working of, I think, UN bodies. So I'll explain, like I'll place this in a particular context, like why the work of Isabel is important historically as well. Like I'll go back to the 1940s to explain why her work is important. Like even in 1940s, leaders in different countries were trying to like understand the problem of different countries, like the similar caste-based problems, descent-based problems of different countries. As several of you might know, that there was a letter exchange between Dr. Ambedkar, a prominent leader in India, with W.E.B. Du Bois, a prominent civil rights activist in US. And they were exchanging letters to, and Dr. Ambedkar wanted to know how, like if, like why Du Bois was raising the voice of African Americans in an international platform. Ambedkar wanted to know about that. Before, like this is a popular story, before Ambedkar, like other anti-caste leaders, for instance, say Dr. Lohia had also exchanged letter with Du Bois. Lohia had sent writings on the problem of Indian Dalits to Du Bois and told them that he has been studying the problem of African Americans and that the leaders of different countries should know about these problems. So there have been attempts in the past by leading individuals from a society to build a better understanding of like similar societal problems which are based on hierarchy and discrimination. And you see how it plays a role in international rights framework, that when the Universal Declaration on Human Rights was adopted, caste wasn't included caste wasn't prohibited as a ground of discrimination, like specifically not included in the text of UDHR. Several scholars like Thorat or Sukhdev Thorat sir or Paul Devakar sir, or in a recent paper Surendra Kumar, have written how the framing of such conventions was very European centric, and that's why it missed the problem of caste at that time, that it thought that caste is a very country specific problem and therefore it wasn't included in an international rights-based framework. And this has continued till now. You see what happened in the Durban Conference against racism. India also doesn't recognize caste as a form of racial discrimination, even though Nepal has accepted that, but India still hasn't done that. Like scholars, social scientists in India have discussed that how caste is different from race or descent-based discrimination. So in that context, I feel that the work of Isabel Wilkerson gives a new contribution in understanding the relation between caste and race, because till now, people were trying to distinguish between the two. And I also think in the legal scholarship, a discourse was missing on like the relation between caste-based discrimination and race-based discrimination. Like there are few works like Smita Narula had written an article on the legal aspect. David Keane wrote in UK about the problem of caste in international law. So it had been missing, and in particular, like I have studied both in law in both in India and US. So I felt that whenever we do like comparative studies of constitutional law, even in that, we generally do not include like different form of discrimination, similar form of discrimination in different countries in understanding them in a comparative perspective. So I feel that this work might change the vocabulary of rights-based framework. Like it has the potential to do that, and therefore we need more works in like similar works in the future as well. Like someone can think like why recognition of caste in international rights-based frameworks is important, because then you can make individual countries accountable. Like there was a case, for instance, I'll give an example from India. There was a case called Safai Karmchari Andolan versus Union of India before the Supreme Court, where the petitioners had petitioned the court to ban the practice of manual scavenging, where the lower caste Dalits were forced to do this inhuman job of cleaning human excreta with their bare hands. And like people die every day in sea works, sanitation workers die, mostly Dalits. So in that case, if caste was a recognized form of discrimination in international forum, court could have relied on that and like send a strong message about ending these practices in different countries in India itself, even though the constitution also recognizes it. But I feel that having like prohibition in international context could have endorsed a grammar for justice, what Kalyani said. So I feel that is why Isabel's work is important. Thanks.
Thanks, Anurag. So, dear audience, please type your questions in the question and answer box in Zoom, so that we'll have time to figure out your questions and read your questions. And I request you to specify whom your question is, and please be concise and within the topic. So now, Kalyani.
Thank you, Amar, for inviting, and thank you, Anurag and Sarita, for those wonderful insights on the article. So I had the chance to read Isabel's work, Caste, and I've also read the articles which came in New Yorker and other places. So I'll briefly flag off some of the issues which I want to discuss on Isabel Wilkerson. Now, the discussion on Isabel's work on caste is important because it is an extensive work that is not just written in a spur of moment, rather it is part of a long-drawn research. Isabel's work is a narrative non-fiction that has accounted stories across different continents, and it has tried to explore caste as a social structure, and that has largely determined an unequal relationship that exists in humanity. It's interesting to find that in the process of exploring what race and caste means, Isabel has engaged with caste as a structural category that has somewhere transcended the geographical and cultural boundaries. For instance, Isabel has argued that an American experience of race is not very different from caste experience of Dalits. In fact, she has interestingly picked up on the instance where Martin Luther King, when visited India, he was introduced as an American untouchable to the Indian audience. Thus, caste as a social category is so deep, entrenching, and well structured that it can explain race relationship and even many other forms of inequalities that exist in humanity. Isabel's book has in fact discussed so many case studies where Blacks have been subjected to caste-like discrimination practices like exclusion, taunting, and even life-threatening attacks. The only difference in the discrimination practice against caste and race is that while racial discrimination is as old as 400 years old, caste discrimination is older than 2 millennia. I think Wilkerson's work is particularly interesting because of her ability to understand racial discrimination beyond its conventional understanding. She says caste is the bone, race is the skin. Clearly, she's hinting that racial discrimination has more nuanced aspect to it than just the difference in the skin color. Racism, like casteism, has operated in history and it has established itself through caste-like discriminatory practices. Thus, the killing of George Floyd or the killing of Dalit boy Vikas Jatak from Amroha is same because the caste-like social structure has rendered both of them equally vulnerable. Interestingly, Isabel has discussed 8 features of caste that is also present in the practice of racism in America. Some of these include concepts like purity and pollution, endogamy, dehumanization, stigma, etc. I think Isabel has developed a nuanced comparison between race and caste and has blurred the boundary between race and caste. I think in doing so, she's not just interested in developing a theoretical proposition of understanding caste and race. Rather, she has very interestingly developed her argument to understand the practice of caste, what the practice of caste means, and the larger harm caste does to humanity, whether it is in the form of casteism or in the form of racism. I think her proposition of bringing race and caste together is very revolutionary because it has somewhere tried to weave a common narrative of oppression, and and at the same time it has called up for a radical empathy through Baba Saheb's philosophy of educating, agitating, and organizing. I think a work like Isabel is very challenging because it has opened up common communication network between Dalit Bahujans and Blacks in America. Her work has given its reader common language to Blacks as well as to Dalit Bahujans to collectively imagine a shared experience. So I think that's my brief reflection on Isabel's work on caste. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalyani. So Mari, so can you hear us now?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, great. So yeah, you have 2 questions to respond, and you'll have 10 minutes.
So hopefully everyone can hear me. Apologies for the previous kind of tech issues. And I just want to say Jai Bhim to everyone, and thank you so much to Darnal Award organizers and also to Samta Foundation organizers. You all have done a beautiful thing by, centering our community members and in particular this discussion of Wilkerson's work at this time. So I want to thank you for that. A little bit about me is that my name is Mari Zwik-Maitrey, and I am from a Dalit family from Tamil Nadu. And my parents both grew up in very small kind of rural villages, and where the experience of caste was very intense for them in their generation. So my father, for example, has experienced being beaten and thrown out of a temple for being Dalit, and both of my parents have experienced the kind of anguish of poverty, the anguish of starvation, and all of the issues that come with being labeled as part of this caste system structure as being low. So some of my convictions around the work, and even why I came to the work, come from these experiences of my parents. But I myself have also experienced caste. It's not that I haven't, but I've come from a family also. Both my parents, they have been heavily influenced by, their lives have been influenced by the movements of Ambedkar and Periyar, almost to equal amounts, actually, so they, both of them were anti-caste movements. And because of the results of those people fighting and bringing forward certain ideologies, they were able to get education and access. And as a result, my experience of caste has not been as severe or in those ways that their experience of caste has been. But I've also grown up watching my um, dad, for example, worked with the Bahujan movement, Kanshiram ji and Mayawati ji, and my mom was equally a part of those instances of activism. Like basically, their whole life was activism. But one thing I have constantly noticed in my time growing up is that people recognize my dad's work as being important and being urgent and being, something to be celebrated and remembered. But people did not recognize my mother's work as being any of those things, urgent or to be celebrated or important. Because my mother was often in the background cooking for people who would come to our house, meetings when people gather, taking care of people who needed homes, people who would come from village. So she did a lot of care work, a lot of emotional labor work, and also manual domestic labor work. But these kinds of feminine labor, you can say, are not recognized as being actively useful or an actively a part of the movement. So for me, my conviction to join the anti-caste movement is not just as a person who is against caste, but also against the gender outcomes. So against gender discrimination, both within and without the movement. So that's why my work has always revolved around women and queer and trans folks. And I continue to kind of be in that realm. So that's sort of where I came from, and what are my convictions and how I formed them around anti-caste thought. So with respect to Wilkerson's article, I just want to say that I was just so excited to read the article, and I have gotten the book, but I haven't had the time to fully read it. I skimmed through some of it. But I have read the articles in the New York Times and even some of the reviews. And I just wanted to say there are a few things that really struck me. And I think one of the things is how she deals with race as an outcome, that outcome of the structure of caste, right? It is built on this fundamental foundation of social division, and race is only an outcome. And in her words, actually, she says, race does the heavy lifting for a caste system that demands a means of human division. So in that respect, I think I think that was really core to the article, and even the other panelists have brought forward that idea. But that to me was very interesting to think about, very interesting to sit with and ponder, So I also think, along those lines, when I was thinking about it, I read in one review that said that, that said something along the lines of like, I read the whole book and the word capitalism has not been mentioned even once in that book. And it was said as a form of criticism to say, or critique, to point to the fact that the book does not deal as much with class as it does caste. And I think that in my opinion, that is an outcome of how she is dealing with the subject as a whole. In the sense, she is concerned with the fundamental framework which is underlying these issues, be it class or race. They are outcomes of the fundamental framework. And often when you speak about caste, I think you have to understand that it is more than a thought about class or class divisions. It is more of a thought about fundamental human dignity. How much human dignity you have is basically defined by a system. So you can be a Dalit doctor, and you can be one person can be a Dalit doctor, one person can be a Brahmin doctor, and in every kind of class and status marker, they can be the same. But at the same time, they will not intermarry. They will not maybe eat together. Maybe they will not do a lot of social equality doesn't exist between them. So therefore, the need to focus on this question of dignity, question of fundamental human equity is, I think, has been Isabel's focus. And so that to me was struck me as being important and being intentional and thought out, to be honest. The second thing I think that struck me is how she talks about, quote, caste and race are neither synonymous nor mutually inclusive, end quote. And I think that I have a lot of thoughts, and I have a lot of things that maybe even my esteemed co-panelists and I can, we can kind of think together at some point. And it's also coming from me being, I have lived in the US for more than 10 years. I have lived in India, and I've also lived in Southeast Asia because my mother's family traces some origins to Southeast Asia. So I understand what it is like to be racialized in the context of a white supremacy, in the context of a white supremacist societal structure. And in America, I think, some of you have been there, so you may have had similar experiences. I have been read as black, right? I have been followed and harassed by police. I have been asked if I worked at the retail store, can I help them? I have been called the N-word. I have been in a store where a small white child has said, "Mommy, mommy, look, a black person," pointing at me, just because I also lived in rural America. So I have been racialized. And back in the subcontinent, and in particular in India, I am both casted and racialized. So it is a very unique experience where, in India, I have almost two castes. I have a caste as a Dalit person, and I have a caste as a black person, meaning a black-skinned person, right? So there is a multiplicity of caste systems, and there is a multiplicity of experiences in India that kind of does complicate this idea of caste and race as put forward by Isabel. So for example, she says that, when people are accused of being racist, they react very like, how can you say that? I have black friends, I'm not a racist. Therefore, talking about caste as the structure, Isabel has written that will be a much more useful, much more accurate, and it is a framework with a much more accountability towards oppressors, right? Accountability that oppressors have to take on. But in India, I have noticed many people, when they say, when you say to them, this is a casteist practice, they will say the same thing. I'm not a casteist. Don't you know that I have a Dalit friend? Don't you know that we have sat in together and eaten with Dalits? Or these kinds of things. Don't you know that my sister's brother's uncle is, married to a Dalit person? So in India, I think there is a question of how, as movements, as activists, as academics, how can you bring back the focus of caste to the structure so people can stop here?
I want to stop you here. You are out of your time. So,
Okay.
yeah,
I will just take 2 minutes or 1 minute and finish it
just
off.
1 minute. Okay.
But so I really appreciated those 2 points. And I think the third point, which I really appreciated, of course, is that she uses the vocabulary consistently of the Dalit Bahujan Adivasi movements, including dominant caste, marginalized caste, subordinated caste, right? So I think that that has been also a very nice thing for me to hear, because it shows that we can put ourselves on a similar underlying platform and fight together, keep our pain together and fight together as well. So I want to thank Ms. Wilkerson for her beautiful analysis, and I'll end it at that. Thank you for my time.
Thank you, Mary. And I want to request the audience again to place your question in the question and answer box, not in the chat box. Now, I want to go for the third round of the questions to the panelists. So the question is, so building on the increasing debate on the need and possibilities for innovative global alliances on caste race issues that Isabel's work speaks to, and now a likely possibility of new US Vice President in the near future, that is Kamala Harris, who is a powerful, dynamic woman of South Asian heritage. What gives you hopes or worries about the future ahead? Do you have any advice to fellow young people? So I want Sharita ji go first.
Yeah, thank you, Amarji. Thank you, Marie, for sharing your amazing thoughts. As always, so lovely to hear from you. And here are a couple of points that I want to make. And the first thing that I would like to share is I'm learning to learn more, to understand more about Kamala Harris. The idea and possibility of a new vice president of multiracial background, that to a woman of Asian African heritage in the United States of America, sounds fantastic and uplifting, I would say. Knowing how unlucky we are with the majority of the male world leaders who are shameless in playing the politics of fear and division based on caste, race, religion, gender, and ethnicity. So the second point would be, in light of pandemic, which is devastating for marginalized people, especially Dalits, what gives me hope is my modest work with many inspiring young Dalit change makers in India, Nepal, and other parts of the world. I'm also encouraged by the way larger global community, especially the non-Blacks, responded to the recent Black Lives Movement in America. I know our fight against caste indignities in South Asia is a very complex and challenging issue. I believe that our fundamental reasons for why we fight together is politically, morally, economically, culturally, and religiously is the right thing to fight for. And here I also believe that the ruling elites from the high caste know that the house that they claim to be ruling and governing under the hollow slogans and rituals of democracy has a serious foundational problem. The foundation or the structure of their society country is based on unequal treatment of its core human infrastructure. The thinking of treating its people as unequal citizens on cultural and legal basis cannot be sustained. In Nepal, as per our newest 2015 constitution, women have unequal rights compared to men. And secularism in Nepal is defined as for the purpose of respecting and protecting Sanatan tradition, which essentially means the continuation of caste-based system, right? So my third point would be, though the numbers are very small, I'm also hopeful because more younger non-Dalits are beginning to recognize that they are part of the caste problem in Nepal. If non-Dalits were to genuinely engage with caste questions, I believe it would, of course, help Dalits life of equal dignity and equal rights, but it would also help them to reclaim their human dignity. So this coming year, Darnal Award for Social Justice is focusing on identifying and working creative people such as artists, writers, filmmakers, musicians, poets, etc., who are engaged with caste questions worldwide. If you know them, please encourage them to visit our website. As a writer, I really believe in the power of storytelling. We need more storytellers so that we can decide what and how to tell our stories of suffering, resistance, accomplishments, and dreams. I want to end my talk by quoting one of my favorite writers, Chimamanda Adichie, who says, "It is impossible to engage properly with a person or thing without engaging with all of the stories of that place or that person. When we realize there is never a single story about any place, we regain a kind of paradise." So with this note, I just want to say thank you to everyone, and let me stop here. Thank you, Amarji.
Thanks, Sarita Pariyarji. Anurag?
Yeah, thanks, Amar, again. I feel having people in positions of power, people who are conscious of the problems of society, conscious of the wrong things that have happened in the past, I think that must happen. Such people should come. And in that context, I am hopeful with the nomination of Kamala Harris as the Vice President nominee in the United States. I feel we should have more. I think we should have more similar candidates in our countries as well, who openly are conscious about the problems of our society. I'm hopeful in that context that we'll see younger generation taking an active part in the movement for social justice. At the same time, I feel like delighted and happy to see how movements in different countries have influenced each other. Like we have recently seen how like Black Lives Matter movement emerged in US, and how it resonated in other countries as well among the people of marginalized sections in different countries as well. So I'm happy to see that people are communicating with each other, like activists are communicating with each other. A lot of people are understanding the problems in different countries. So I'm hopeful. I'm happy to see that. I'm like my message to fellow young people is to not repeat the mistakes of the past. One thing which I've noticed often is like the movement has been occupied generally by men, and so we have to be cautious of giving representation among ourselves to women among the movements as well. We have to be conscious of the mistakes that have happened in the past. Apart from that, it's I think also important to learn from the successes of the movements in other countries as well, and it would be helpful to build alliances. Like we have seen examples in the past how like Dalit Lives Matter campaign had emerged in India. We had a particular party called Dalit Panthers, inspired from the Black Panthers in US. So it must not be just limited to politics, but in every sphere of life, we can learn from the movements in other countries as well. I come from the law background, so I'll give a specific example of how the civil rights movement could help, like the legal campaign, the legal activists in different countries in India and Nepal. We talk about generally when we talk about the civil rights movement, we mention Dr. Martin Luther King, We talk about Malcolm X, but equally it is important to talk about Thurgood Marshall and Charles Houston, who took the battle for civil rights in the courts of United States. And because of the litigation that they did in the court for almost half a decade, led eventually to the Brown versus Board of Education decision, which held that the racial segregation in school is unconstitutional. So to see like Thurgood Marshall, who eventually became the first African American judge in the history of US Supreme Court, to see him argue in the courtrooms inspired the Blacks so much to be vocal about their rights, to see him question the oppressive system in the courtrooms inspired the Blacks. So I think I personally feel that we have very few people in working as lawyers coming from the community in India and Nepal, and so like on that front we lack. So if we could like work in those areas to strategize litigation, I think we could learn from Thurgood Marshall and the civil rights movement. So I think that like these were the two main points which I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thanks, Anurag. So before I invite Kalyani for her response, I would like to give the time to Professor Shailaja Paik. She said that she needed to leave the meeting soon. So Professor Shailaja Paik, please, I invite you to put your brief remark and please finish it in 2 to 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, everybody. It has been fantastic to listen to all of you. I have really enjoyed participating in today's event. Thank you very much, Sarita, Mari, Anurag, Kalyani, and Amar for this fantastic job. So I am very proud of you all, global Dalit change makers. It's working. It's great. So keep continuing your good work, and I want to congratulate you all for this wonderful initiative. And I hope that you will continue to working on these lines. This moment is very important historically. I'm a historian, so I have to speak on those lines because we cannot forget our past. Because to build our present, to intervene in our present, and to build our sustainable future, we also need to know our past. So I really liked, as to how all of you shared both your experiential and journeys of different kinds of oppressions that you had to experience, and also how your scholarly investigation has basically helped all of you to analyze the social, economic, political, ideological, and intellectual forces that going back and reflecting on your experiential. I think that is the most important contribution that we make as Dalit. I want to include myself in Dalit Change Makers group. And this is our unique potential that we bring to scholarship. So it is very important that we always, base our work on our scholarly spine. And all of you are doing it in a very fantastic way on different lines. This is what we really need to do and to build our intellectual community. So this is absolutely wonderful. Anurag working on lines of caste and law, very much needed. Amar working on anthropology and looking at as to how caste unfolds in these areas. Kalyani with her cultural and social literary work, looking at popular culture and women's emancipation. Sarita through English literature, and also sociological, and I know she is also moving on to her legal journey. and Mari as a social scientist working with equality labs. So all of this is, really, really fantastic, and you're working on these different aspects. So that is very good. And I have really enjoyed this conversation. The second part was about Wilkerson's book, the history of conversations between Dalits and African Americans, especially on these, their perspectives of caste and race, goes back about 150 to 200 years. So there is a lot of work that has been done, but at the same time, Isabel Wilkerson's book, in this particular present moment is very significant because of the Black Lives Matter movement in the US. Then we have the Cisco case that threw up, as to how caste was operating and how John Doe, this, the name given to this Dalit person who was talking about his oppression, is fighting against all these challenges. And third is the election of Kamala Harris. So we need to know that, these conversations are very, very important for Dalits in the diaspora as well as Dalits overall globally. And what Wilkerson is doing is, yes, the work is new, but at the same time, it is building up on this historical scholarship and the conversations that have been taking place for the last 200 years. And there is also a gendered aspect to this, because most of these conversations were taking place between men who contributed to this particular scholarship. I wrote an article on building solidarities between African American and Dalit women in 2014. Perhaps that is something that you could refer to. And also, the conversation, not only the conversation, but the actual work where we have Angela Davis, Kim Crenshaw, visiting India and working with human rights activists and Dalit activists. So Wilkerson is, continuing this thread. So, we need to be mindful of, what the building up of these solidarities over long years. So it was, and also I had a chance to meet her. So, she is committed to this, speaking about these intersections of caste, race, gender and sexuality. And this has come also from her first book, The Warmth of Other Suns. So there is a lot, and we see the sociologist, so there is a lot of, field work that has gone into her.
Pike, please wrap up your remarks.
Yes, and that's all. So I just wanted to congratulate all of you and, just lay out as to where Wilkerson is coming from. So thank you very much for having me here. And I look forward to your future work, and congratulations again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much for your wonderful, inspiring remark. And also, we are very much inspired by your work and by your professional achievement as well. So now I invite Kalyani for your response to the third question.
Thank you, Amar. Firstly, I would like to thank Shalja ma'am for encouraging young scholars like us and giving her valuable inputs to whatever we presented today. And to your third question, Amar, I think the question has two parts, wherein you want to first you want us to reflect more on the American politics and the entry of Kamala Harris. And the second part, you're talking about the future. As a young Dalit scholar, how do I see the future of engaging with the caste question? So to the first question on Kamala Harris and her entry into politics, it's great. And it's good, like Anurag and Sarita said, it's good, like there is a new South Asian voice, a South Asian voice which is coming up in American politics. However, I think we need to all, as anti-caste scholars, we also need to understand that the South Asian voice is never a homogeneous voice. It has been intersected through gender, caste, and even to the dimension of religion. So obviously we know that Kamala Harris, she has the privilege of belonging to a Brahmin mother. So I think she needs to, like, if she comes to power, she needs to be more critical of the whole proposition of Brahminism, and challenge the privilege which she carries. So I think if some of these questions she takes up on the anti-caste issues, etc., it will be great. So the second aspect about the future prospect, or how can Dalit Bahujan identity, what is the future and the hope for Dalit Bahujan identity? I would like to say that the hope of anti-caste discourse lies in developing a true allyship. However, I think we need to rework on the concept of allyship and think about it in terms of more than just social networking. I think to develop a true allyship is through which based on possibility of true allyship can be materialized only if there is radical empathy, which Isabel's work has brilliantly discussed about. Further, I think a true allyship will also call for civil repair, where voices from a different section needs to come together and stand together for the cause of equity and justice. I think very important engagement that Rethinking Caste globally needs to understand is that anti-caste discourse is not just limited to India or to Nepal. Rather, it is a South Asian phenomena. In fact, even more, because caste, even though it has its genesis in Hindu scriptural tradition, through the diasporas, both old diaspora and new diaspora, caste has traveled to different lands, and thus there has been establishment of caste and caste-like structures to far-off geographies. So I think we need to go beyond, we need to transcend the geographical boundaries and need to engage critically with the caste question, and we need to have a more holistic and a more global perspective on caste. So thus I think without a critical engagement with caste as a global phenomena, it will be difficult to annihilate it in letter and spirit. So I see the hope of casteless society in in establishment of an anti-caste discourse globally, where people come together and voice together against oppression. So that is it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kalyani. Mari, could you respond to the question?
Yeah, sure, Amar. So I was thinking about, Kamala Harris coming onto the kind of big spotlight right now. It's not, I think to me, it doesn't strike me as something that is a win for many oppressed communities, because this is, while she represents herself in the garb of, she's, in the sense, she's like in the garb of the oppressed person, right? So she is has Black ancestry, she has South Asian ancestry, and for all intents and purposes, she is a minority in America. And I do respect that. But if you look at the history of Kamala's political leanings, Kamala's relationships to her communities, they have been fraught. They have been fraught. She has been a prosecutor who has put several black people behind jail, and there are many black people who do not appreciate that part of her history. She is pro-cop in many ways, and so that does not sit well with the message of today if we say Black Lives Matter. But I think for me, I may not have that much, understanding to comment on that side of it. But I can say that every time I have seen like a interview or something about her family, her Indian side, it has exposed how Brahminical her family has been. So, even in the way that they speak Tamil, which is a Brahminical Tamil, or the way that they have all their family members are still wearing a jano, right? Or the way that they speak about particular issues. These are all kind of flags for me. These are flags that there hasn't been a real reckoning with themselves on the issue of caste. So, I think that I'm not thrilled about a Kamala Harris, or for that matter, a Joe Biden, Kamala Harris duo. And I don't think that this is going to be in any way kind of progressive or emancipatory, even if it happens, right? So those, I think, I was also thinking that, Kamala comes from, or Kamala's family comes from a region in India where there has very actively been an anti-racist, anti-caste movement in the form of Dravidian movement. It's a very racialized movement. It's a very anti-caste movement. And along the battle lines of those movements, she actually falls on the oppressor side. So I think that Kamala Harris, let's see how it goes, but I'm not particularly thrilled on that front. And for I think the other part of your question was, what are the kind of remarks I want to give for young fellows? I would say, it's hard to be from these communities. It's hard to be Dalit, whether you're in primary school or middle school or high school or college, or even if you have transcended the subcontinent and come off to the US, you still face, as the Cisco case shows us, and also, our report from 2018 has shown us, that caste kind of is everywhere. So you still have to face it. And it is a hard thing. And I would say, stay strong, take comfort in the politics. Take comfort in the politics of Ambedkar, in the politics of Periyar, in the politics and history of Savitribai Phule. And that is where I have personally derived comfort. And I think that our young people, when they are disconnected from the movements, they don't hear our actual history. They don't hear the actual things that we have to be proud about, because they are kind of miseducated through the school systems that exist. And so learn about your history, get connected to movements, ensconce your political power, and, kind of will push through it. Like we push through and then we survive and we also thrive. So that's my general piece of advice for everyone.
Okay, thank you, Mari. So thank you all the panelists, Sharita, Anurag, Kalyani, and Mari, for sharing your incredible experience, ideas, and vision. Now I want to invite our respected thinkers to make their brief remarks. Professor Shailaja Paik has already made, and now we have Ambassador Padman Sundas and Professor Khansa Ilaya Sefer. So please limit your remark in 2 minutes. So Ambassador Padman Sundas, I invite you first.
Thank you for organizing such a good program that I was wishing, or I was very eager to see all these young fellows. Thank you, Sarita, and thank you, Amarji, for organizing this program. I am the founder president of Samata Foundation, and now I am only a board member in leave. I cannot say so much as I expect. Actually, this Samatha Foundation was established 10 years before, and the founder president, I was the founder president, and Suvash Darnal, my best friend, was the executive director of that firm. And at the time of establishing that Samatha Foundation, Suvash and myself had a dream that we should have a one, publishing house. We'll have our own TV channel, and we'll have our own open university that produces the young generation for the upliftment and for this this upliftment of this Dalit Andolan. Unfortunately, it's going to be 9 years that we lost Suvash, and today is that day that which I don't want to remember. But unfortunately, we have lost a very dynamic leader, dynamic future leader for the Dalit upliftment, and this community also has lost a very dynamic leader. That dream that Suvash has dreamed in his mind, how much we have done, how much we have not done, it's the time to evaluate now. If you say the work that we have done in Samatha Foundation, very little publication work is done now. But the main thing that our main thing is that to combine or just to have a young generation for this Dalit movement. Because until now, the movement is going to be 70 years in Nepal, but that scholars or the educated peoples and the non-educated leaders were not in the same platform. That's why main thing that the experience of the old leaders and the knowledge of the young scholars from Dalit communities to be combined and for this caste discrimination. So it's a very good starting from Darnal's award or Samatha Foundation that all these scholars are now in one platform, just like Amarji, and there is a Mom Vishwakarma in Australia, and Dr. Mitra Pariyar. All these scholars are now involving in this movement. So the starting is very good, and I hope this young generation, young leaders from the community will just lead the movement, not only in Nepal, not only in South Asia. It's a global problem that we are facing. It should be combined. It should be, combined effort from all these.
Thank you, Ambassador Padam Sundas, for your remark. Now I want to invite my friend Sunaina Arya to read out the questions from the question and answer box. So I want each panelist just to respond in 1 minute. We are running out of time, and as scheduled, originally we have to end at 8 o'clock, but now because of technical glitches, we started some 15 minutes later. So I hope audience would not mind to stay 15 minutes longer, but yeah, but we will finish it in 15 minutes now. So Sunaina, I invite you.
Jai Bhim, everyone. I am Sunaina, and I would just go straight to the questions. And I've tried to reformulate and relate the questions and clubbed it together. So to the presenters, are you ready? So yeah. So first set of questions, 2 questions to Sarita. One, can you speak about who the organization or institution who funds for Darnal Award, and how was the journey? You know, how did you get this very important award? And on the second is on contextualizing Isabel's argument in context of internal hierarchies in Nepal, Dalit communities vis-a-vis with Dalits, Madhesi Dalits and Pahari Dalits. So how would we reflect on these issues in context with Isabel's argument, so these are the two things I would request you to reflect on. And Amar, should I ask other speakers, or should we?
You can ask right now to other
Okay, so
panelists as
that
well.
why?
Be short and,
Sure.
and concise.
Sure.
We are running out of time.
Sure. Second set of questions to Mari. Mari, first, does mixing caste with race has a fallout of specificity of the caste system? Caste has been older as compared to race. So will this comparison have this loophole of, not capturing caste completely? Second, relation of caste with religion. So as caste is vivid in Hinduism, while it is not so vivid among Muslims and Christian people. So I would request you to reflect upon that, and quickly also on the current status of queer Dalit feminist activism in South Asia and globally. Then next questions for Kalyani. How do you see a possibility of Dalit Bahujan collaboration and strong solidarity, while Bahujans also oppress Dalits, and there had been long history on that? And also there was a question by Tom Cox about what does Dr. Ambedkar's legacy mean to us the activists and scholars and writers who are there also in global Dalit change makers. So I would request you to answer this question on behalf of GDCM. And then next question set is for Anurag. Anurag, how do you see that Black activism and scholarship help in Dalit activism and scholarship? And second, what are the possible and pragmatic ways and strategies of regional collaboration, that is North-South and South-South collaboration? How are we going to take this forward as global Dalit change makers? This is a question asked by Dr. Purna Nepali. And another question, if you would want to reflect upon Isabel's use of conflicting terms like creamy layer or elite Dalit. So I think we could capture these, and then if we have time, we can take more questions from the audience. Thank you.
Okay, so dear panelists, please, respond to the question in just 1 minute. We are running out of time. So we'll have other forum and opportunity to respond them.
Great. Thanks, Sunaina. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really want to be super brief, because when we talk about caste system, there are endless conversation that we can go on and on. And I just want to be very brief. So who funds the Darnal Award? So I have a trust fund, and I got like a modest settlement from the accident that had with my late husband. And that's how, that is the trust fund that funds for this award. So this, coming to the second question, thank you, Kalpanaji, and I think we should be talking about this. And the most important point that I would say, like, caste is all about the graded inequality and hierarchy. So within the Dalits and within the non-Dalits, right? Which is why everyone should have the mission to annihilate the caste system. So I think all I can say, whatever I have done so far, and some of the foundation, and there are so many important organizations that have been continuously working. So I think young writers like you from Madhes, and being as a Pahari Dalit woman like me, I think we have greater responsibility to continue to work on this internal, this Madheshis, Dalit Madheshis issues. So let's talk, and I would be more than happy to talk, and that's all I want to say for now. Thank you.
Anurag.
So I have 3 questions, so I'll answer very quickly. First was about how Blacks scholarship and movements can inspire and have inspired. So how they have inspired, we have examples in India, like from Black Panthers, we had Dalit Panthers. From Black Lives Matter, we were inspired to have Dalit Lives Matter campaign. So a short answer to how they have inspired. How they can inspire is that like scholarships, clarity of thoughts can be used from like African American scholars if it is found that it is more clear. Like for instance, Kimberly Crenshaw talked about intersectionality, I think, which has equal relevance to India and Nepal as well, like how sometimes Dalit women can face multiple forms of inequality at the same time, and therefore we must be conscious about addressing those. So like some ideas can be, like, I think, applied universally, so it can be in that way. Second question was about building collaborations. I think at this, like I said previously, studying about movements in different countries is very important. Understanding the limitations of the movements in other countries is important, so that you don't repeat the same mistakes. Like when you read about the civil rights movement, so definitely try to read about how successful the civil rights movement was, or what were the limitations of the civil rights movement in US. And so that, but to build up team, like I think you could discuss or engage with scholars and activists with different countries, see what problems they are facing, see if your problems are similar, or how you both can address them together. So I think that could be a brief response to the second question. Third question was about the term used by Wilkerson, elite Dalits. I think like it's not the first time that I'm listening the term elite Dalits or creamy layer. I've often heard that, like, a lot of cases have been filed in Supreme Court asking that the so-called creamy layer of the Dalits should be excluded from the benefits of the policy of reservations. Elite Dalits was also used by a scholar, Suraj Iyengar, in his book. He talked about some elite Dalits in his book, Caste Matters. With due respect to all the discourses, I am not very much convinced about the term creamy layer or the elite Dalits. Like I'll give three very short points. First, I feel that if you look at the political history of India,
guys, I should stop you right here. Okay, Kalyani, can you respond? Be very brief.
Okay, so I have two questions, and Sunana has just asked one more question. So if I have time, I'll answer. I think the two questions which are asked is like are heavy questions, and it needs more time. But since I have just 1 minute, I'll just briefly talk about it. The first question I think Rupali has asked is about Dalit Bahujan collaboration and about Bahujan oppressing Dalit. So I would like to answer this by saying that when I use the term Dalit Bahujan, it is balloony to use it as separate entities. Both Dalit and Bahujan have emerged in a particular moment of history. So Dalit has its root in Dalit Panthers, and Bahujan has its roots in Manevar Kanshiram's movement. So I think using both the terms is actually appreciating the kind of anti-caste movements that has happened in India. And so when somebody is saying like, there is a need for Dalit Bahujan collaboration, I think it has been there. Because when Kanshiram movement was happening, he ensured that there are enough OBC women in his movement. And so I think there is a need to engage more with this aspect of Dalit Bahujan and oppressed communities across, rather than hinging on caste, hinging on one particular identity. And about this, OBC's oppression on Dalit, yeah, it is a problem. But let me also bring in here the fact that there is a report which says there are scheduled caste communities which practice untouchability against other scheduled caste communities. So I think the problem is at the root. And the problem is at a Brahminical mindset where the caste identity wants to, show their dominance through adopting Brahminical means. So I think somewhere the hope for collaboration has been there, and rethinking about Dalit Bahujan identity is the new way out to establish the supremacy of the 85% which this country constitutes of. Now, the question on Dr. Ambedkar's, what Dr.
Kalyani, I
Ambedkar...
think I should stop you here. So sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Mari?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to suggest maybe you guys can finish your thoughts in the chat window. And I'll just take my questions really fast. I think the first question was about caste and race, and caste having a longer history of 3,000 years, and race being a much more recent construction. And I would say that I think it's important, let's, for the moment, forget the fact how long ago it started, and just assess its relevance in today's day and age. And both caste and race have relevance in today's day and age globally. And the making parallels or making language to deal with both and ideas to deal with both, putting them on similar platforms, helps create solidarity between these communities, between these ideas, and helps kind of smash the social construction parts of both of these ideas. So I don't think that it's irrelevant. I think it's important and timely as well. The second question about caste in Islam, caste in Christianity, I think, as opposed to Hinduism, I think that, it is undeniable that caste has its origins in Hindu scripture. And in Hindu scripture, a person is not able to be seen equally even by God as his other members. And so what some of these other faiths have offered, including Islam and Christianity, is an opportunity to be seen under by the divine under an equal light. And also some of the histories of these religions, including like Christianity, has a long history of for example, Jesus fighting for the marginalized, fighting for the oppressed, fighting for the outcasts of their time, right? So that is also, it can be like a thing that attracts people. Now, the third question was about queer and trans feminism amongst Dalits, and I think that, just to there's so many wonderful things happening on this front. It really needs focus and attention. And there are so many people doing really great work. And I would actually direct people to the work of Grace Banu or Living Smile Vidya or Charu Priyan or Chandni Gagna, Dhiren Borisa, there is Aroa Kun. So there's so many people who are taking the conversations along these lines into the front lines. And it is time for the heterosexual, masculine sections of the Dalit or Bahujan movements to make some room to include all of our community members and to address those internal fractures.
Thank you, Mari. Thank you. So we have so many questions in the question and answer box, and Sunaina was ready to go for another round of question, but because of lack of time, we couldn't do justice to your question. We couldn't take all the questions from the question and answer room. So we will have definitely other forums to talk about that, or I request panelists to respond to the question and chat box, question and answer section, if you can right now, or they have, our panelists have their emails, and you can direct your question to their email as well. So yeah, again, thank you so much all the panelists, Sarita, Anurag, Kalyani, Mari, for sharing your incredible experience, ideas, and vision. I found in you a great passion, commitment, vision, and ideas to engage with the problem of caste. I don't know what the audience felt, but I am really inspired from their work, passion, and ideas. I hope this discussion is illuminating to you. This is just another conversation about rethinking caste globally. This is not a stop. We have to continuously and with more energy and commitment think and rethink the question of caste, locally, regionally, and globally. Caste easily adapts to and transforms itself with other social, political, and economic changes in a country or in the world. So we also need to constantly update our knowledge, continue to rethink it. But I hope tonight's conversation has given you some new insight, has shifted your own perspective or has urged you to ponder more on caste. I hope the conversation has given you some inspiration to work on the question of caste.